Ladies and gentlemen, dear Ambassador Kmentt, it's a pleasure and honor to welcome you here on behalf of the Vienna School of International Studies. We are the hosts of this. In the case of Alexander Kmentt, we've pleasured that in the main hall of this room there will be the awarding of the Seán MacBride Peace Award 2021, just to remind us of the COVID situation once again. It is not often the case that an Austrian diplomat gets such a distinction, not because we are not in favor of peace building and peacemaking, but because in the multilateral arena, it is not easy, as we all know, to have success. For that, you need perseverance, and for that, you need commitment. And both things Alexander Kmentt has to a very high degree. There will be many other people who will say something nice about you. But this is not for my introduction here, but just let me say that for us here in Austria, you are certainly the Austrian Mr. Disarmament. And this is a distinction, I would say. We all know that many people would say this is an abstract field, disarmament and nuclear prohibition. But these last few days and weeks have shown that it is something which has been used and is being used by the Russian Federation as an argument in a political conflict. And it may be not the last time that this is being done. So it's to people like Alexander Kmentt that we have to be thankful for keeping up, to trying to talk to those countries who have nuclear weapons, but also to other areas where disarmament is necessary. We all know that sometimes peace may be better achieved by military means than by other means. And the Ukraine conflict looks a little bit like that at the moment. But at the end of it, it's not about what the arms can achieve, it's about whether there is a stable peace building possible. And we all know that for this disarmament discussions and everything that Alexander Kmentt and others are doing in the multilateral field is important. Our foreign minister has always said we need an effective multilateralism. And I think you have proved it's possible to have an effective multilateralism. And that's due to your commitment. That's a lifelong commitment, as many of us know, and a commitment which concerns not only the practical side, but also the academic side of these issues. Please keep on doing this, and from my side, really congratulations and thank you very much.
Mr. Briggs, thank you so much for this welcome address as host. My name is Rainer Braun. I was for many years the president and the executive director of the International Peace Bureau, and my job is to lead you through this evening, not to speak. So I will immediately give the floor to Rosa Luger from the host, second host from Austria, our partner organization ABFANG from WILF. Luger, the floor is to you.
Distinguished Ambassador Mr. Alexander Kmentt, distinguished guests, dear friends. It's an honor and pleasure for me to address you here today on behalf of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Austria, a member of the Austrian Alliance of Peace Organizations ABFANG, and one of the oldest women's peace organizations founded in 1915 in the midst of the First World War in The Hague. We are here today to honor Ambassador Mr. Kmentt, who, as we know, is one of the main architects of the humanitarian initiative on the impact of nuclear weapons, which led to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We are all most grateful to you, Mr. Ambassador, for your long-lasting commitment to the cause of nuclear disarmament. This cause, as we have heard already, is more important than ever now that we must realize that the consensus that nuclear weapons must never be used is broken and the strategy of deterrence does not work. In the context of the war in Ukraine, several explicit and implicit threats to use nuclear weapons were made by Putin and his government. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is an important instrument for nuclear disarmament. Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, through its disarmament program, Reaching Critical Will, led by Ray Atchison, was and is actively involved in the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, ICAN, colleagues are also here, and in the adoption and implementation of the Nuclear Ban Treaty. The treaty, once and for all, outlaws the use and threat of nuclear weapons and provides a framework through which the nuclear-armed states can eliminate their nuclear weapon programs. Mr. Ambassador, allow me today to say a few words about the beauty of your treaty. This treaty that you have helped to come into existence, you are one of the main midwives, so to speak, is not just important because of its content, it's also important because of how and for whom it was made. It was made by the people of the world, for the people of the world, not by the so-called powerful states and the nuclear weapon states, which opposed it fiercely. Some say that this is why the treaty is weak. We say the opposite is true. This is what makes it strong. It's a new model for democratic cooperation in the United Nations, where every state has a voice and a vote. It's a truly United Nations document adopted by 122 member states. Many countries, especially countries of the South, diplomats and civil society organizations from these countries, indigenous people, youth organizations, and women's groups have worked tirelessly with you to get this treaty adopted. The treaty recognizes the disproportionate impact of nuclear weapon activities on indigenous people. It also acknowledges that the full and effective participation of both women and men is an essential factor for the promotion and attainment of sustainable peace and security. It ensures victims' assistance and environmental remedies in the area of nuclear testing, and it requires age and gender-sensitive assistance without discrimination. Thus, the treaty has a clear lens on the rights of the people and the rights of groups of people who face multiple discrimination. Mr. Ambassador, let me, at the end of my intervention, provide a quote from the declaration of the first meeting of state parties to the treaty. The meeting took place in June 22 in Vienna and was chaired by you. The last paragraph of the declaration so vividly expresses the spirit in which the treaty was adopted and came into force, your spirit, Mr. Ambassador. The last paragraph is, we have no illusion about the challenges and obstacles that lie before us in realizing the aims of this treaty, but we move ahead with optimism and resolve. In the face of the catastrophic risk posed by nuclear weapons and in the interest of the very survival of humanity, we cannot do otherwise. We will take every path that is open to us and work persistently to open those that are still closed. We will not rest until the last state has joined the treaty, the last warhead has been dismantled and destroyed, and nuclear weapons have been totally eliminated from the earth. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for working so closely with civil society on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. And the first question is, what is this prize? Seán MacBride Prize. Who is this? My colleague, Jean Connor, will now explain shortly why IPB is giving, since quite 20 years, this award to educated, scientific people engaged for peace. Jean Connor is the new Executive Director of the International Peace Bureau. The floor is to you.
to say first off, I'm very honored to share a name with the namesake of the prize as well, Seán. That's a very nice name. But Seán MacBride, of course, has a long and very interesting history that led to him being the namesake of IPB's Peace Prize. He was a lifelong activist for peace and justice. His origins were in the anti-colonial resistance of his home country of Ireland, where he fought as part of the Irish Republican Army and took part in the Irish War of Independence, leading to his imprisonment under abysmal conditions. Turning to political channels to make change, he founded his own political party, Clan na Poblacha, dedicated to peace, human rights, and progressive policies. This included for political prisoners and prisoners of war. In government, he served as Minister of External Affairs and was crucial to the acceptance of the European Convention on Human Rights. He later became the President of the Council of Foreign Ministers in the Council of Europe and Vice President of the Organization for European Economic Cooperation. MacBride was also a leading figure for a range of international institutions, serving as the Secretary of the Irish section of the League Against Imperialism as early as 1929. He was the co-founder and international chair of Amnesty International from 1961 until 1975, and Secretary General of the International Commission of Jurists from 1963 until 1971. Seán MacBride then came to lead the International Peace Bureau, first as treasurer, then chair, and finally as president. It was under his leadership that IPB became the secretariat of the Special NGO Committee on Disarmament and held an international conference on disarmament, leading to the call for a UN conference under the same theme, which came to fruition in 1978. Under MacBride's leadership, IPB also visited Gensuikyo in Japan and organized an international symposium on the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Seán MacBride was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1974 for mobilizing the conscience of the world in the fight against injustice. He also received the Lenin Peace Prize for fighting against what he himself referred to as the absolutely obscene arms race, and was awarded the UNESCO Silver Medal for Service. MacBride also had a sizable influence on the creation of constitutions for many newly independent African nations and served in a number of UN positions from Assistant Secretary General to President of the General Assembly and High Commissioner for Namibia. Seán MacBride's legacy lives on through his very own Peace Prize, which since 1992 has been awarded to a wide range of activists from all over the world who work in the same themes that MacBride himself was so well known for. Thank you.
I think Alexander Kmentt is staying in a good tradition. And I can only say thank you, Jean, for introducing us to this very important guy, which was a leading figure for the International Peace Bureau about many, many years. An award ceremony without music is impossible. So I'm very happy that I can announce to you the duo Arte, Maria Clara Castilla and Nadja Stiegler. Both are well trained and educated at different schools of musicians. Please come in, and the floor is to you. We are very happy that you are joining us tonight. And that they are coming 2 minutes too early is because our speakers are very disciplined and absolutely in time, and no one expect that. So please excuse that you have to wait for us. Welcome to our ceremony. The floor is to you. so much. Nadia Stiegler and Maria Kafnia both will come back to us. This was only the opening of this evening. It's a great pleasure for me and also an honor now to announce Angela Kane. I met her the first time in Hiroshima on the stage. I think it was a good place to meet. And you know, I have now a long, long list of all the important positions from the past, the present, and the future of Angela Kane. I will shorten the list to 2 announcements, and please excuse that I'm not speaking about your whole life. She was, and I think this is a key point, the United Nations High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, which she was very helpful to connect civil society and government and the United Nations in the fight for peace in a nuclear weapon-free world. And now she is the Vice President of the National Institute for Peace in Vienna. Angela Kane, the floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Director Brown. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. And Ambassador Kmentt, oh, there he is. Ambassador Kmentt, and also dear Alexander and dear Rebecca, Director Brown and Director Connor, dear ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here with you tonight, and I'm absolutely delighted to give the laudatory speech for our honoree tonight, and that is, of course, Ambassador Alexander Kmentt. Alexander and I have worked together very closely over the last decade, and I've been able on many occasions to observe firsthand his engagement and his passion for nuclear issues and other disarmament issues. His commitment is powerful, and combined with his power of analysis and pointing out the flaws in the arguments of the nuclear possessor states, I can tell you that he is really most effective. And he has made tremendous contributions to advance the goal of disarmament in a variety of ways, not only in nuclear matters. In preparation of the Peace Prize ceremony today, I met with him last month. Over a cup of mélange, I learned that he started working on disarmament issues very shortly after joining the Foreign Service. For him, working in multilateralism was really important, and one of the crucial issues, existential really, he said, was disarmament, to which he has devoted over 20 years. One of the things was in Geneva in 2000. The conference on disarmament was then already stagnant, it was deadlocked, and the, quote, golden age of disarmament was over. But he witnessed what is possible outside treaty negotiations. He saw how anti-personnel mines came to be banned in the Ottawa Treaty, and the leading role that one person played then, Foreign Minister Lloyd Exworthy of Canada. Personality and leadership matters, he concluded, as do relationships that one develops over time and which are so important in diplomacy. He saw potential in advancing issues where a small country like Austria could make a difference, even without the big powers. And in that spirit, he offered to host in Vienna the third and the last conference on addressing the humanitarian consequence of nuclear weapons, following the conferences held in Oslo and in Nayarit, Mexico. As we know, it was the final conference leading to the negotiations on the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, which has already been mentioned. I know that the Austrian Foreign Service does not have ample staffing, and I can only surmise how much hard work and stress went into the preparations of the conference, culminating in the overwhelming success. Here we are in Austria, a country with the most wonderful wines, and Alexander told me afterwards that for the year leading up to the Vienna conference, he didn't touch a drop of alcohol. One of the factors of success was highlighting the difference in talking about nuclear weapons, not in the context of abstract security policy concepts, but looking in very concrete terms at the consequences of a nuclear explosion inflicted on people. This brought the issue down to earth, to a level that not only policy experts, but also ordinary people could relate to. The shift in framing was incredibly important, and the move by Austria to issue a humanitarian pledge which others could associate themselves with, was a highly successful initiative and was finally supported by two-thirds of the United Nations membership. Alexander wrote a book about the TPNW, how it was achieved and why it mattered. It is a fascinating read about the strategy, the planning, and how to build support for an objective in concert not only with states, but with academia and civil society organizations. The book is, above all, written from a deeply personal conviction and shows us how much personal relationships and networks of cooperation matter in diplomacy. Despite the growing number of signatories, now 91, and states parties, now 68, the TPNW has been dismissed by the nuclear powers in a most cavalier manner. And I'm sure Alexander, as well as other leading figures, have had their share of unpleasantness. But he perseveres in his quest of wanting to make a difference for the better in this world. The TPNW, he told me, has punctured the myth that there's only one narrative, the belief that nuclear deterrence is a guarantee for stability and keeps us safe, even though, he pointed out, it is based on a conceptual paradox that nuclear weapons will not be used, even though deterrence is dependent on the threat of their use. The TPNW is a credible countermodel to this argument, and it underlines the primacy of the humanitarian and human rights concerns that should rule decisions on the threat or use of nuclear weapons. For Alexander, disarmament is not a process. It is not a bargaining and deal-making in back rooms, but it is all about people, how to avoid human suffering and preventing the devastating humanitarian consequences of weapons use. In that same vein, he positioned Austria as a vocal advocate against the use of explosive weapons in populated areas, the so-called EVIPA, as 90% of the EVIPA victims are civilians, not soldiers. Together with his colleagues, he spoke on this issue at UN meetings and any other fora that had humanitarian issues on the agenda. I looked at the Foreign Office website, which lists the engagements, and it is an impressive compilation indeed, going back several years. He also organized conferences on EVIPA in Vienna, which were instrumental in bringing together a constituency that led to the adoption of a political declaration earlier this month in Dublin, which was endorsed by 80 countries and had strong support from civil society, academia, and the ICRC, among others. Finally, let me mention his latest speech on autonomous weapon systems, which Alexander delivered in October at the UN General Assembly. It was a statement issued on behalf of 70 countries, and it's thus the largest cross-regional group statement on this issue. The statement admits that not all states agree on what form an international response needs to take, but they all share a recognition that an urgent response is needed, which I hope will lead to a more ambitious diplomatic action in the years to come. The delivery of a statement at the UNGA on behalf of the countries is usually granted to the ambassador of the country who has been instrumental in forging the consensus and adoption. And this again is a recognition of the superior diplomatic and negotiation skills of Alexander Kmentt. His accomplishments are many, and the record of his advocacy and engagement in disarmament fora has led to concrete outcomes. That is not an easy feat, as we all know. It needs persuasion, and it needs perseverance, and a spirit of dogged pursuit of the final goal. Alexander is indeed a worthy recipient of the Seán MacBride Peace Prize, and I'm pleased today to share the podium with him while he's being decorated. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the change of the program, I'd love to ask Alexander Kmentt and Jean Connor to come to me, that they can make the award ceremony. And please, everyone take his cameras or his smartphones, not to miss something. And then I give the floor to the musicians, and then Alexander will make a speech. Okay. Jean, you are ready? You have the medal? Okay. So, now it's your
On behalf of the International Peace Bureau, we are very honored to present you with the Seán MacBride Peace Prize for 2021. Here you have as well the medal. Thank you. One more thing coming forward over there. Just wait 1 second. We have one. No, yeah. Come on up. Please go ahead.
You should give the flowers to your wife. I think she was very often waiting for you when you were on several tours around the world. I think Angela can explain exactly how difficult it was to reach this big goal. Can I give the floor now to our distinguished musicians? The floor is to you again, and thank you so much for the brilliant opening, but we are waiting for the next round.
For the next piece, we are playing the second movement of the sonata of César Franck.
Alexander Kmentt, can I ask you now to give us your acceptance speech?
Thank you very much. I'm, of course, extremely humbled by all the very nice things that have been said about me. Thanks to you, Mr. Braun, to Angela. Really, as a civil servant, you don't expect this, so it's really a wonderful experience, and I'm very, very grateful. I'd like to thank the International Peace Bureau for this honor. I'd like to thank the Diplomatic Academy for hosting us, and Emil Brix for his kind words as well. This is a moment for me to say a few specific words of thanks. Let me first say that this prize belongs to my wife Rebecca, just as much as it does to me. She always says that when she met me, when I was 22, that I was a fairly failing student, and some of my old friends who here can testify to that. Fairly failing student and certainly not a diplomat. The fact that I turned out to be one is largely because of my wife for standing by me, always supporting me, which also came with a considerable price tag for her. So I'm very grateful. Thanks. I'd like to thank, of course, the Foreign Ministry for actually giving me the opportunity to be able to work on such important issues for such a long time. Because without being paid to do that, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which is the main reason for this prize, that is a truly collective achievement. So we will hear soon from Beatrice Finn from ICANN. ICANN includes a lot of brilliant and committed young and not so young people. Without those activists, we certainly wouldn't have a treaty. Without the ICRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and the Red Cross movement, we would not have a treaty. And then, of course, without some of the diplomats, we would not have a treaty. And there, firstly, I want to say there was always a fantastic Austrian team, colleagues of mine who are absolutely brilliant and all go beyond what is in any job description. And I'm pleased that some of them are here. There is, for example, Ambassador Christian Strohey, who was in Geneva when much of this discussion started, and he gave me lots of tactical advice and encouragement. Then the TPNW is inspired by landmines and cluster munitions. Ambassador Wolfgang Petric, who was the predecessor of Ambassador Strohey, we worked for many years together on that, developed some of those approaches. So I'm really pleased that you're here. Thomas Heinutzi, he's unfortunately not here. He was the successor then, and then my successor in the Foreign Ministry. He actually, he played a crucial role as well. The work on explosive weapons is largely due to him. I was able to sort of reap the benefits at the very end, but he did most of it. Really brilliant colleagues. And then special thanks to George Wilhelm Gallhofer here, with whom I've now worked so much. He was in New York during the negotiations, in the conception, and now in the whole period preparing for the first meeting of states parties. Martin Krüger, my colleague, is also here somewhere. So thank you to all of you. I think this armament, in particular the work on nuclear weapons, there's Susanne Hammer in the back. She's a fantastic colleague as well. She has just a newborn baby and is watching from the distance. I'm really grateful that you're here. Thank you for everything. I think this armament, in particular the work on nuclear weapons, have become an example how Austria can play a leading role internationally, working together with other stakeholders, of course, on one of the most important and also most contested international issues. In addition to the Austrian team, of course, there were many diplomats from a broad range of countries, I think representing multilateralism at its best, with strategic thinking, commitment, tactical finesse at a very high level, and sustained effort for many, many years. Colleagues from Ireland, from Mexico, South Africa, Costa Rica. We will later hear from Ambassador Elaine White-Gomez, from Brazil, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, and from New Zealand. And I'm very happy that one of, dare I use the word veteran, is here. Ambassador Delhige from New Zealand played an absolutely crucial role in the TPNW as well, so I'm really happy that you're here. All these stakeholders pursued this goal of a treaty with the conviction that a clear norm in international law, based on a profound set of new arguments on the humanitarian consequences and risks of nuclear weapons, can and will point the way out of the nuclear weapons predicament that has been with us for almost 80 years. So let me say a few words why this is important in my view. 60 years ago, Cuban Missile Crisis, we were at the nuclear brink. Today, we're on this brink again, with the risks of nuclear conflict being higher than in decades. Nuclear risks have dramatically increased since the Russian aggression in Ukraine and the nuclear threats that have been made. The risk of use of nuclear weapons is high. Many experts say this. All of us need to realize with urgency that the nuclear weapons issue is back as an existential threat to the survival of humanity. It never went away, of course, but it just largely disappeared from the public discourse until the Russian president reminded us very starkly. So we are today at the fork in the road on the nuclear weapons issue. Either the conclusions that are being drawn is a re-emphasis on nuclear weapons, on nuclear deterrence, and I think states that do not have these weapons at the moment will watch this very carefully, will maybe draw the conclusions that they too need nuclear weapons. And the logical endpoint of this is, of course, further proliferation of nuclear weapons, more states with these weapons, potentially exponentially higher global risks as a consequence. The other conclusion that can be drawn is that what we see right now has brought into sharp focus the fragility of the approach to international security that is based on nuclear deterrence. That this is not sustainable and that a paradigm shift on nuclear weapons is necessary and urgent. And this is, of course, what the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons stands for. It provides the necessary paradigm shift. It makes the case for the legal prohibition that is based on new scientific evidence and research on the broad range of humanitarian consequences and risks of nuclear weapons. So nuclear deterrence is certainly a compelling concept if indeed it works. The super weapon that compels humanity into a dangerous, cold but stable peace that overcomes thereby the human propensity for war. The problem with that thinking is that we just simply cannot know for sure. It can neither be proven that nuclear deterrence has worked in the past or will work in the future, just as much as it cannot be proven that it hasn't worked in the past and has not prevented war in the past. Ultimately, nuclear deterrence is a theory. It assumes and projects actions. It projects intentions and expected outcomes. Skeptics have characterized nuclear deterrence theory as an article of faith. And that carries with it, of course, many uncertainties and the risks of overconfidence and of a potential confirmation bias. So it is necessary to consider the full range of implications and consequences of the actual use of nuclear weapons, the actual explosions, in case this theory proves false. And policy decisions regarding nuclear weapons must be based on the empirical facts and evidence on the consequences and not on the assumed non-use of these weapons based on shaky evidence around nuclear deterrence. Not only is it impossible to appropriately address the humanitarian emergency of a nuclear weapon detonation, let alone a nuclear war, the new scientific evidence that we built over years highlighted that these consequences would be truly global and complex and much more catastrophic than previously assumed. In short, there is new evidence, new scientific evidence, that nuclear deterrence, if it goes wrong, means that all humanity ends up as collateral damage in much more severe ways than previously understood. And similarly, we have today a much better understanding of the complexities and the broad range of risks associated with nuclear weapons, which are ultimately borne by all of us. And all of this raises profound legal and ethical issues and questions about the legitimacy of the nuclear weapons status quo. And all of this has been brought into sharp focus by the TPNW. But why does this treaty matter? What's the point of a treaty of nuclear have-not countries that want to prohibit nuclear weapons when the countries that have these weapons obviously don't care? I think if the international community votes with their feet through joining the TPNW and thus expresses that the nuclear status quo does no longer have any legitimacy and that the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons is unacceptable and unlawful, that's actually a big deal, certainly for those of us who believe in international law. And the fierce opposition to the TPNW that we've seen from the nuclear armed states is actually the best evidence of the transformational potential of these arguments. But even more so, I think the transformative power of the TPNW is based on the arguments on which it is based, which is the scientific evidence and new research on the consequences of nuclear weapons, the higher understanding of the complexities of risks, the obvious legitimacy deficit and questionable ethics of using nuclear weapons for national security of some at the expense of the security and the potential survival of all humanity, the injustice of the nuclear status quo and the even more pronounced intergenerational injustice if ever anything goes wrong. And finally, the fragility of this approach that is right in front of us, in front of our eyes, that exposes the precarious nature of nuclear deterrence. So the TPNW does not make the case for nuclear disarmament that can easily be dismissed as an utopian, dreamy concept, dismissed by the so-called realist. It actually makes a crystal clear and realist security argument, namely that nuclear weapons fundamentally undermine the common security of all of us. A case that is based on solid evidence, and that this evidence must be weighed against the assumptions on which the belief on nuclear deterrence is based. And this leads, I think, to the conclusion that believing in the continued stability of nuclear deterrence may be a lot more utopian than the case for nuclear disarmament can ever be. So if nuclear weapons do not end up being used, so are not used in this current crisis, will it be seen as a validation of nuclear deterrence? Or were we just lucky again? Will we continue to assume that nuclear deterrence will hold in the future until someone else starts playing Russian roulette? We can see the fragility and the precariousness of nuclear weapons status quo and the risks to humanity right in front of our eyes, and almost all vectors in this field currently point in the wrong direction, towards more focus on nuclear weapons and on nuclear deterrence, a possible new nuclear arms race, more proliferation, and even the use of nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons are talked about, with catastrophic consequences, potentially global consequences. The TPNW is the one development that points to an alternative approach to this issue and to an alternative approach to security. One that is not based on the permanence of the threat of mass destruction, one that categorically rejects the threat and use of nuclear weapons, and that builds on international law and multilateral cooperation. At this time, especially, I think the TPNW is a precious and indispensable ray of hope for humanity against an otherwise very bleak backdrop. And this is the end of my remark, but let me thank you once again, first of all, for coming at this horrible weather and to share this fantastic honor with me. It's really a fantastic moment. And thanks to all my team and my colleagues, and to my wife.
What to say after such a speech? Maybe only a short comment. It is a pity that the President and the Prime Minister of the P5 states were not listening to this speech. I have again the pleasure to give the floor to our musicians. Welcome again. The floor is to you. Alexander Kmentt mentioned in his speech that the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was a collective work. And I'm very happy that we have now two colleagues which were working with him and were playing a key role in developing these treaties. First of all, we will have a short intervention by Elaine White-Gomez, Ambassador of Costa Rica,
Kmentt,
chairing the UN session, which at the end adopted the treaty, and who was present in New York, knows that she was playing an important leading role that this session comes to such a successful result. Please, the video.
Dear Alexander, dear friend, special Ambassador Kmentt, dear Alexander, dear friends, special guests, in this very special ceremony. I wish I could be with all of you now, enjoying this wonderful ceremony and the magnificent atmosphere of Vienna this time of the year. But I am also grateful that despite the geographical difference, I am able to share this special evening with you. In this special occasion in which Alexander Kmentt receives the Seán MacBride Award for his extraordinary vision, his relentless commitment, and the mastery of diplomatic statecraft, which actually he has put to the service of the objective of building a new nuclear weapons-free zone, a free security paradigm for the whole world. I recently heard the expression that leaders, to actually provoke change, need to have a combination of mind, heart, and hands. I would add the words grace and also human warmth. I am sure that we all agree that the capacity that Alexander has shown to think the long distance, to build a strategic view, your capacity to understand and explain very complex concepts and processes, and also your personal traits as a very talented and intelligent leader, but with such human warmth. They all have been a fundamental pillar in the historic process that has led to the legal prohibition of nuclear weapons. I also want to talk about dreams. You are a human being that has the capacity to dream. And this capacity to dream requires both mind and heart, but also a profound ethical belief in the best side of human nature. And I believe in the possibility that we have as a human race to actually generate change in an improvement in the world. Also, I want to bring to this equation the concept of courage. Because exerting leadership does not imply to tell nice words to those around us. Most of the time, leaders need to have the resilience to take the pressure, the attacks, and sometimes even the rage of those whose establishment we are trying to change. And you have shown that courage, vision, but also patience. Beyond patience, you have shown strategic perseverance, which is, for me, the single most important human trait of everybody that I have met in the field of human disarmament, of nuclear disarmament. Alexander, the humanitarian movement of nuclear weapons has your name, your heart, and your hands imprinted in its history. I was able to give my contribution to this dream, passing this enormous political and historic and doctrinary capital of the humanitarian movement through the difficult process of intergovernmental negotiation and institutional complexities. In that moment, you were there to support and to contribute, but with great respect for the work and the responsibility that I had upon my shoulders when we were during the negotiations. And once the treaty entered into force, I cannot think of a better person to lead the preparation of the first meeting of state parties. And I could not have aspired to a better result than the one that you were able to orchestrate, with the support of the movement of the humanitarian impact, civil society, scientific sectors, and those of us who were perhaps watching from the fence, but with our heart invested in supporting your work. I want to say thank you, Ambassador Kmentt, dear Alexander, for giving us the best MSP that we could have ever anticipated. Even more, as I have mentioned in the past, MSP1 went beyond our expectations and renders the treaty in the best possible journey for the difficult process of regime consolidation. Now, looking towards the future, I want to share with you all that this week precisely, I had the opportunity to give a presentation about nuclear weapons and the TPNW to the cohort of the Advanced Leadership Initiative at Harvard University, a group of consolidated leaders from all segments of society. I have to say that I was struck by the fact that they knew so little, or they had so little awareness of what we all know about the humanitarian impact. The reality of the legacy of the use of nuclear weapons in tests around the world. The amount of resources that are dedicated to nuclear weapons, the risk of use, and also the challenges of the command and control mechanisms. Also, there is a tendency to analyze events with the lens of the short term. And for most people, it is difficult to envision the impact of norms because they happen in the space of the long term, with which most of us are not familiarized. So these two aspects, they have really impacted me, give us an indication of where we need to go to engage the public in this long journey of building a world free of nuclear weapons. And in that process, I dream that we can have one or several coalitions that bring together the business sector, just like the one that had such a positive impact in the field of climate change. And I know that in continuing to advocate, continuing to educate the public, and continuing to broaden the support coalition of the non-nuclear new world that we all dream about, I am sure that you will continue to be a driving force, and I will be very happy and honored to join forces for these objectives. But today it is a day of gratefulness and appreciation, and I want to convey to you my deep appreciation and respect for the wonderful and inspiring work that you have undertaken throughout decades to see the world free nuclear weapons become a reality. So congratulations and enjoy your well-deserved recognition. Thank you all.
I think we all agree that the treaty would not become reality without the role of ICAN, the International Coalition Against Nuclear Weapons. And I'm very happy that the Executive Director of ICAN, Beatrice Finn, sent her greetings to our ceremony today.
On behalf of ICAN and the 650 partner organizations all over the world, I extend my warmest congratulations to our dear friend and ally, Alexander Kmentt. We're delighted to see his extraordinary work being recognized with the award of Seán MacBride Peace Prize. For us in ICANN, Alex represents the human embodiment of dedication to our goal of eliminating nuclear weapons. And as long as I personally have been involved in the campaigning against nuclear weapons, Alex has been an inspiration, an ally, a co-conspirator, and of course also a friend. Over the past 10 years, Alex has worked really patiently, systematically, tirelessly, to slowly but surely bring nuclear weapons into the realm of humanitarian disarmament, to bring new perspectives and change entrenched thinking in his own and many other governments. Many diplomats and officials speak of the importance of civil society, of ensuring open communication and access, of building partnership. But unfortunately, too often, these proves to be just empty words. But not Alex. Alex meant it. He understood from the beginning the potentially world-changing power of true collaboration between governments and civil society, especially in the face of opposition from entrenched interests and powerful states. In his early work with the Anti-Personnel Man-Bind Convention, Alex saw how effective this kind of collaboration could be, and he did an outstanding job in helping to build a similar powerful coalition to outlaw nuclear weapons based on humanitarian grounds. It is often said that failure is an orphan, while success has many parents. Many people have worked to make the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons a reality, and many more are working to implement it, and even more supporters and people committed to the treaty continues to grow steadily. But only 10 years ago, a nuclear ban treaty was an obscure, eccentric, and even absurd idea, known by only few, supported by even fewer, and Alex, he was one of those few. Not only did he see the goal clearly, he knew what needed to be done to get there as well. So many of the crucial steps along the path of the TPNW could not have been taken without Alex. He was instrumental in building and shaping the humanitarian conferences, particularly in 2013 and 2014, and particularly the third one in Vienna. He persuaded his own government to launch the humanitarian pledge, which was really proven to be a key to assembling global support for a ban. And in the dark and frustrating months of 2015, undaunted by the malaise and pessimism that followed the 2015 NPT Review Conference, and in the face of skepticism from many, even, I regret to say, from me, he championed the UN Open-Ended Working Group in 2016, which led directly to establishing the negotiations of the treaty. So as far as the TPNW can be said to have a parent, Alex is it. And he literally has written the book about the treaty, which everyone should buy, by the way. So I just wanted to say again, from all of ICANN, congratulations, Alex. We could not have done this without you, and we really look forward to continuing to work on prohibiting and eliminating nuclear weapons in the years to come. Thank you.
Dear colleagues and dear friends, we are coming now to two closings, which is exactly also the opening of the reception. Because first of all are the closing by words. This will be done by my colleague Jean Connor, and then, much more important, the closing by our distinguished musicians. They will immediately following Jean's words, and then we'll have to invite you to a glass of wine and to stay together with us for a nice evening. Jean, the floor is first to you.
I will keep this nice and short so we can move on to some more exciting parts, but just to say a few words here, I think Alex is a man of many names. Ambassador Kmentt, Mr. Disarmament, or I've penned a new one, Mr. Multilateralism as well. I heard that term mentioned a lot, and I think it's also very symbolic of the work that Ambassador Kmentt has done, and also, of course, the father of the TPNW. We've heard a lot about Ambassador Kmentt's character tonight, his courage, his ethics, hard work, his belief in really making this happen, And I think that's something that really is encouraging for all of us here in the room, especially I can say for some of the younger generation like me, who are looking up to role models, who have this courage, audacity to fight against these entrenched norms or systems such as nuclear weapons and nuclear deterrence in our society. We've also heard about all the support that Ambassador Kmentt has received to get to this role, something I think we really need to honor, and maybe just a quick round of applause again for everyone who has had a part in bringing Ambassador Kmentt to this position and to this role. So just a quick round of applause for everyone. With that in mind, I think we will also have many future MacBride awardees and other awardees, who knows, of other prizes, who will reference Ambassador Kmentt for the role that he has played in supporting them and leading them to their leadership positions. So I'm sure many more will honor you in the future. We've also heard, of course, of the strong power of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons to setting new norms, to challenging systems, and to representing really the best that we have as a society and as human beings, as a planet together. The humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons is something that really, again, reminds us of our humanity and our connections to one another and the need to defend each other and defend our planet, hopefully by eliminating nuclear weapons. And just one final concluding remark. I couldn't help but thinking, as we've been listening to such great music, that Ambassador Kmentt is himself a musician of sorts, playing expert parts, but always with accompaniment around him to make beautiful tunes that can inspire us to push forward for peace. Thank you.
Now we have a little closing
Many thanks again to Nadja Stiegler and Maria Kastner, and the door is open. And I think you will find the way.